Welcome to the Cobb Cole podcast, where attorneys are of no short supply and your values are met. I'm Jess, the Marketing and Culture Manager here at Cobb Cole, and today we're going to talk to Jessica Gal and Rob Merrell, who are land use attorneys at Cobb Cole. All right, guys, welcome, Rob and Jessica. Jessica, as one of the newest partners and a part of our land use team, do you want to tell us a little bit about your career path and how you made it here to Cobb Cole? Maybe a little bit about your education?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm not from Volusia County. I'm a lovely transplant here. Went to law school at Florida State University just for land use and environmental law. And so going through that program, one of my closest friends in law school is from Volusia County. Her family owns a real estate company here. She graduated a semester early, came down and joined Cobb Cole. And about 3 months in, gave me a call and said, I want you to move here and work with us. We're looking for an environmental and land use attorney. It's exactly what you want to do. And I said, I'm in. We moved here, and I told my husband we will never move again. So we are here for the long haul.
Awesome. Rob, as a senior land use attorney, you're from this area, though, aren't you?
I am.
Yes.
So senior means old, I assume, right? I'm actually fourth generation.
Seasoned?
Season's better for me. Thank you. I'm actually a fourth generation Volusia County resident. But interestingly, I was born in New Haven, Connecticut. My dad was doing his medical internship in New Haven, Connecticut at Yale New Haven Hospital. And my dad met there, and my oldest sister and I were born there, and then the rest of the family born here, Halifax Hospital. But yeah, definitely a local.
And you went to school here, Rob?
Went to Seabreeze High School. Yep.
Oh, gosh. I'm a bulldog, so I'm sorry.
That's all right. At least you're not a mainland buck, you know. I went to Duke undergrad and Florida Law School, and then ended up here.
So you both came from different places. How did you end up here? What was the sort of thing that spoke to you that made you come to Daytona Beach? Who wants to go first?
I want to say I recruited her, but apparently that's not the case. I did take credit for that at one point. I must have mistaken her with someone else, but I very clearly know her well now, so I did make a mistake. I came here in large part because my dad was a physician that tried to dabble in land development over the years, and I watched him make a lot of mistakes, and I realized there might be an opportunity to be a land use lawyer. So that's why I came here, and I met Alan Watts, who you guys may know about, and Alan was my mentor, so was very fortunate to learn from him, and he was one of the best ever. So that's kind of what hooked me, is meeting Alan, having lunch, and saying, okay, that's my career path.
Aw, I love that.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I would say mine's a little different. I'm sure Rob sold it really well in the interview process. Like I said, close friend from law school, worked here first, kind of recruited me into the area. I think that when I came in, when you do the interview process overall, the interview question I asked everyone at Cobb Cole is, what do you do to give back to the community? And everyone I asked got so excited to give the answer, including Rob. And so seeing the impact on the local community and kind of carving out an area where I'm not from here, I don't have the family ties, but building those community ties and making sure you can give back always kind of pushed me forward.
Knowing that means a lot to you, Jessica. I know you've had some time to sort of get acquainted with the area. What are you doing now to engage in the community?
Sometimes too much, I would say, if you ask my husband about our schedule day to day. But I tend to focus on areas that my skill set may help the most. And so I'm very passionate about affordable housing. A lot of my volunteer work focuses on the planning and land use law side of providing affordable housing. Land conservation is another passion. I worked in nonprofits in the government sphere before joining a private firm, so bringing that balance of how do we grow as a community, how do we protect natural areas, and how do we plan for growth is always something that I've tried to balance in my professional and personal life. So committing time and resources and volunteer work to those two efforts have been the primary goals.
Rob, you've also been very engaged in the community since you've been at Cobb Cole.
I have, and it's in large part based on the work that I do, so I'm involved in 𝘊𝘰𝘮𝘬𝘐𝑎𝑟𝑑 and the Chamber and other things. Over the years, I've done a lot of, charitable things as well. But at this point, I'm kind of down to V-Card and the chamber as the main things I'm working on. And, it relates to what we do every day, in our business. And so Jessica and I are fortunate when we drive around town, we get to see things coming out of the ground that we played a part in. And it's something that's that we're proud of.
Rob, did you start at Cobb Cole? Was that your first?
I did, first job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why did you end up there?
Like I said, I had experience in the land use business before I went to law school, and in large part decided to go to law school for the purpose of being a land use lawyer. And when I started to think about where I might end up, I had lunch with Alan Watts, like I said, and that's all she wrote. I mean, he seemed like he was so knowledgeable, and to be able to be around someone like that allowed me to really enjoy the law, as he used to always say, and he loved it. I mean, for us, it certainly is a job, but it's also a passion. So we love being a part of our community, growing and changing. And in the 63 years that I've been in it, it's changed a lot, and we think for the better.
Most definitely. So, being in land use and zoning for this long, was there a story or a project or something that drew you to land use law? Something that was really impactful? You said, I have to be a land use attorney.
Well, we hate to point out individual cases because there are so many, and we hate to say, somebody's was better than the others. But like I said early on, I think most of the things that I was involved in before I was a lawyer were either in Ormond Beach, the city of Ormond Beach, or the county, unincorporated Volusia County. And so I experienced both of those local governments in a way that opened my eyes to how that particular business worked, the land use business. And so no particular cases I would point out because I don't want to have that be something that people look back on and say, why didn't you pick me? But there have been several. I mean, obviously in almost 40 years of doing this, we've had some interesting ones. And even in Jessica's career, I've watched her have some very interesting ones. And
a shorter time frame, but
some more fun than others.
They are definitely exciting. And I'll say, even coming into interview, hearing Rob and the land use team talk about some of the transformational projects countywide that they've been involved in, like Rob said, over the years, seeing what you planned for 20 years ago coming to fruition is really cool, and something that, we talk about doing a bus tour and saying, here's how Cobb Cole was involved in all those pieces over time, which would be amazing to see. We get the stories, and it's like, it's a fun little story time every time that, you get the history of a project.
We're bringing back the bus tour, Jessica.
Perfect.
I love that. I would love for Rob Merrell to guide us through Daytona Beach and tell us all about everything.
Well, you'll see my perspective anyway.
He's got the stories. They're good. And the battle scars in some cases.
Well, and a big part of it is the people that we meet,
Yeah.
People in the government, people in the community, land developers that we represent, and there are a cast of characters that we enjoy being around. That's part of the job, If you enjoy your work, it's usually because of the people you're around.
Speaking of the people, what are some of your usual clients, and why did they seek advice from the two of you?
Well, Jessica's client base is probably a little broader than mine. Mine's been mostly land use, but she's got other things that she does as well. In large part, they're land developers that are looking to come up with a new project here, and we help them get through the process of getting entitlements, zoning entitlements, building permits, and various things to allow them to develop. And that's been my focus primarily for quite some time. I did do some environmental law, like Jessica does now, over the years, but it's been a long time ago. And we actually have some litigation that we dabble in the sense that certain things in the land use world require that, and we have some going on right now. But we don't do that. We end up having specialists do that. Much like we have a lot of specialists in our firm that do a lot of other things that complement what we do, and so that's a big part of our practice as well as land use, complementing real estate, complementing the business attorneys and such. So. Yeah, it's a good mix.
And I think one of the exciting pieces of land use as a practice is who you're representing changes day to day. So you have your national home builders, you have your giant mixed-use developers that are national brands and kind of have development down to a science, and they know what they're looking for. And then you have a mom and pop who want to open a chicken wing restaurant in downtown, and you have, the neighbor who built his fence a foot over in the wrong place, and all of the processes are a little different, but at its core, you're working with the same baseline knowledge. And so getting to help an individual all the way to kind of those big transformational community projects, I think it makes each day different and exciting.
And unlike most legal practices, most of what we do is helping somebody get something that they want done.
Right.
As Jessica alluded to, some of the folks, large and small, who run into problems, whether they be code enforcement based on zoning problems or whatever, they have a problem, and we try to help them solve it. But for the most part, people are trying to get something accomplished, and we help them do that. So they're appreciative. It's a different kind of client, And so we truly do appreciate our clients, where most lawyers, the clients can be a pain, In this case, they're our friends in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I think when Rob says, we don't litigate, right? We don't take the cases directly to court. Rob and I, at least, we do have those in-house, of course.
Right.
I think the key is it takes a very unique person to be a land use lawyer, and we're not necessarily fighters. We're a little bit of negotiators, a little bit of planners, and a little bit project manager. So it's a very unique practice overall.
So the burning question of the hour: what to do when you're considering a property development project? What are some first steps that someone should consider?
Well, I think the first step is to realize that you probably need help from others, not just the attorneys, right? So we have typically, and especially in larger projects, we have a group of specialists that are either architects, engineers, surveyors, biologists, environmental specialists, and people that work with us, traffic consultants. So when especially with larger projects, we're collaborating with all those people to bring forward a project that we normally appear in front of one of the local governments with all those people and explain to them how the project is going to be considerate of the community as we move forward to develop it. And Jessica, you'd agree, I'm sure. We collaborate with a lot of different folks, and again, they're part of the people that I talked about that we enjoy being with and enjoy our work.
Yeah, it takes a village to build a village, I will say. I think at the start of any project, you have to look at what are you trying to accomplish and how do we get there, right? Those are the first two steps. It's what's going on and how can we help? That's how we start consultations. And I think that, as Rob said, there's a handful of players that have to be involved in those decisions. And we've coined a kind of our part of that as the quarterback, the coordinator. We've had a million different names over the years on what a land use attorney's role in that context is. But I think the most important path is charting that course forward of saying, here's where we need to go and how we get there and all the people that we need involved on the way.
Sometimes we're the umpires, right?
That's
so
true.
when we're dealing with government, a lot of people, their experience dealing with government is frustrating. So in our job, we deal with the government every single day. We're a block away, walking distance from City Hall in Daytona for many years. And so they become, colleagues of ours. And even though it appears adverse at times, a big part of the collaborative effort that comes from working with the government makes clients at ease, that you actually have relationships with the people that they're appearing in front of that they otherwise feel like would be a difficult situation for them. So I think that's a big part of it. And as Jessica's saying, all the folks that I was alluding to, the specialists that can help you understand sort of the lay of the land, not only the physical land and how you would develop something based on the characteristics of the property itself, but the political environment, the way that you go through a process and the people you might encounter and all of the different buttons you're going to have to push in order to bring it forward. It's complicated, and we've discovered that. And so people say, why do I need a lawyer, right? There's a lot of law that goes behind what we do, and it's I think it's an important part of our piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. And I think there's a level of comfort for clients when they reach out and they say, we've run into this issue. The city keeps requiring this standard, or the county keeps on asking us for this. And right off the cuff, we can kind of say, oh, were you talking to? And insert a name. They're like, that's exactly who I was talking to.
Right.
And so you say, got it. Let us run with it. We'll reach out. I think in addition to the kind of legal context and the legal knowledge you have to bring to the background, there's a community component of everybody working together to get to the same end goal.
What is the most misunderstood part of rezoning or the variance process?
I'll let you start.
Okay. So when people look at a rezoning or a variance, or really any land use decision, a lot of the times I think there's an initial gut reaction that things shouldn't change. And when you look at land use as a whole and how it's shifted over time, even from the 80s to where we are today, which Rob can speak on more because I wasn't around in the 80s, you look at kind of how we plan for the future and what that looks like. And as those processes change, I think you have some individuals who say, the rules are what they are. They don't need to change. And a big part of what we do in that process is education to elected officials, working with staff members, and even the public to say, well, here's why that rule doesn't make sense in this context. And here's why it would be better. Or here's why we're meeting the intent of a rule by changing it this way. And so I think that's what we run into the most.
So like our good friend Hyatt Brown always says, the one thing that's constant is change, right? And so there's no question that comprehensive planning and zoning laws are dynamic, and we've watched them change constantly. But when you talk to people about zoning or comprehensive planning, they say, why don't you just stick to the rules? The reason why is everything's changing constantly, so the rules have to change. And so Jessica and I do a lot of making sure the rules are tuned up so that they match what's really happening in the world. And, I guess it would start back, you mentioned the 80s. It was 1985, the Florida Growth Management Act happened. And that was right when I was in the middle of law school, and it really changed the way our business worked. Previously, it was, a comprehensive plan was a map and a book you put on a shelf, and once in a while somebody would look at it.
Hopefully.
But after 1985, it became law. So the lawyers truly began to play a pretty significant part in how things are developed, because you have to look at that book and that map to understand whether the things that you're doing, whether they be zoning or variances or permitting, because they have to be consistent by law. So once that legal effect took place, it kind of changed everything. And so that is a surprise to a lot of people. They don't really understand that nuance that, zoning isn't just what you see in the book. There's a lot of iceberg under the ice, right? I mean, under the water. So it's there's a lot to it, and we end up having to be, like you said, educators to people. Here's what's really happening, when you look fully at the comprehensive planning and zoning aspects of this project you're talking about.
And we have to educate ourselves every year, right? Laws change. Every local government can update their rules and regulations anytime through the process. So we have to stay on top of all of that. And then state law changes that impact the practice overall. So it's an ever-changing environment. And I think having a team that is up to date on all of those, recent changes is really important.
What's the most common reason for a project to stall or fail?
There are lots of reasons, and most of them involve, a place where you're at an impasse because someone on one side or the other of the process decided they didn't want something to happen. And so that's where we have to be flexible. I mean, you got to call the plays from the field a lot of times, and we do that. So you're in the middle of a process and you run into something that for one person is a problem. Sometimes you can balance it against something else that you can bring to the table to make it work for everybody. And a lot of what we do, 90-something% of what we do is compromise. We don't get to fighting very frequently. And sometimes there's a little bit of animosity where you have to massage it somewhat, and we do that. So a big part of the lawyer's job is not law. It's making sure that you see all the different perspectives and try to find a place in the middle ground where we can all live together and enjoy the fruits of our labors, right?
It probably won't surprise anyone who knows Rob and I, but in law school, there's an award that you get for being the best in a class. And the one that we share is negotiations. So you can imagine how fun some of our discussions are. But I think that at its core, land use is at a large part negotiating. And it's knowing the framework that you're working in, which is the legal context and the framework that you have under the city or county code. But then it's the flexibility in there so that you can talk to a client and you can talk to a staff member and say, you're reading something this way and they're reading it this way, but here's what it could be. And this is within the code. And can we get there? And like Rob said, 90% of the time, you get to a point where everyone says, yeah, we can probably get there. And a project is better for it usually.
How can the right attorney make or break a development project?
Well, we like to think that we're the key to that answer to that question. But ultimately, I think there are a lot of attorneys, I think, that do a great job at what we do. But in our world, we are sort of the big fish in the small pond. Cobb Cole's got a very deep land use department, and we do everything across the board, other than a few things. Criminal, you have to find somebody else, and some of the tort litigation and such. But at the end of the day, we have such a broad base of expertise that we can cover all the bases, and I think that sort of allows us to stand apart.
I agree. I think that you have a project and you have some land use attorneys who love to do a variance or they love to do a rezoning. But you have a client come in and they say, hey, we have an environmental due diligence issue. We say, no problem. We've got somebody in our firm who does that. We dabble in it. You have someone come in and say, have you ever heard of a community development district? And we said, we sure do. And we, pull in the right partner to assist there. And so I think having that breadth of knowledge across even land use. I remember 3 years in, you get to a point as an attorney where you say, I know everything in land use. I've got it. I know the basics. We're good to go. And then from year 3 on until retirement, I think, you realize you have something new to learn every day. And so
She tells me that frequently.
identifying what those areas are for growth and kind of new knowledge on projects is something that as a firm, I think we encourage and we'd love to see specialization. I think starting, I would never say I love learning about traffic concurrency and roadway capacity. But now I like to pretend to be a traffic engineer sometimes with our team. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. We actually do sort of have to play engineer or play traffic consultant sometimes when the folks that are the true experts aren't around, because it's part of the process, especially on smaller projects. But one of the things that kind of I think is intuitive is lawyers don't generally work well with government officials or with people sometimes. But at the end of the day, the land use law is a very unique practice. You have to really be open-minded. You have to be flexible and willing to compromise, where most lawyers, they're typically trying to fight about something, and they're so adversarial that we, unless you have a certain temperament, you're just not going to get very far. And I've seen many, many lawyers over the years try land use law and just not be able to handle it. It's a different kind of legal practice. And those of us that love it, that's what makes us good at what we do, I think.
It kind of brings us to my wild card question. How much influence do you think that local politics have on the success of projects in our area?
We like to say none. But at the end of the day, there's no question that elected officials in many cases are the final deciding vote on something that we're asking permission to do. So politics are involved in that sense. But when you think about it, those folks are elected by the community, by the folks that are appearing at those city commission meetings to voice their objections or their support for something. And it is politics. But at the beginning of our conversation, we talked about the law. That's the iceberg under the surface. There's a lot there. And Jessica and I have a delicate balance between sort of the salesmanship of the politics versus the legal aspects, because a big part of our job, which most people don't even understand when we're talking at a public meeting, is putting the framework out there to substantiate all of the buttons that are supposed to be pushed and boxes to be checked to meet the legal requirements. And so if you do too much of that, you get too lawyerly, the politics sort of turn the other way. So there is a balance there, and we try to strike that as best we can.
Yeah. And I think that in terms of overall politics, elected officials govern the policy of how we want to grow. And they create this broad framework of what they would like to see in a community. And once they set that, then it's our job to say, and here's how we fit into that. And here are the guiding policies you've adopted, and here are the standards that we have to meet, like Rob said. And once you put together that test, then you've kind of laid the baseline for here's why we are entitled for this request. But you do it in a educational manner or calm manner. So you're not fighting, you're just proving your case. And there is a little bit of showmanship included in it. Sometimes you have fantastic projects and you want to take the moment to celebrate. And I think that it's rare that we have a very tense one, but sometimes they pop in there.
Yeah, and especially if it's the ones where people have a situation where it's a problem to start with, they end up in a situation, they bought a piece of property and there's a zoning problem with it. You got to fix it somehow. Those can usually be a little more difficult, but people come to us for those reasons too. So we're open to anybody who wants to build or just fix the problem they have.
Speaking of, how is a potential client, how should they reach you? What's the best way to contact either one of you?
Rob.Merrell@cobbcole.com.
Rob will whip out his
I
QR
was
code
gonna
business
say,
card.
I do have a
Stop
QR
card.
code.
Your new one is coming.
All you need is a cell phone.
He does love
Take
that.
a picture.
I would say we're active on Facebook. We've got our website. We've got our phone numbers, emails. Call us, beep us if you want to reach us, as Kim Possible
Oh,
would
that's
say back
cute.
in my
I
day.
like that.
But yeah, we're out there. We're happy to answer any phone calls. Rob is available much earlier in the day than I am. So if you've got a problem at 5 a.m., he
You'll
is
get
your
one
guy.
of the two of you.
You
Absolutely.
get Jessica later in the
I
day.
say it if you have a problem at 8 p.m., I'm your girl. That's the. But
Good
one of
balance.
us will
We need
always
that.
answer. Yeah.
We need that. What should a potential client expect in their initial meeting with either one of you?
Well, I think we try to give them a little bit of the basic lay of the land of how we go through processes for people. That's assuming they're going to be going through a process. If they got a problem, normally we need some time to assess it, but we try to listen. We try to understand what their problem is or understand what their challenge is and talk to them about the steps to try to get through a process or to fix a problem for them.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times, like I mentioned at the very beginning, it involves an assessment of something we don't really know about, whether it's an environmental situation that we need a biologist to look at the situation or a soil specialist or someone else. And good news is we have a lot of relationships with all the people that can help with things that are related to their problem or to their challenge that we can collaborate with.
Yeah, when we do initial consultations, usually what we have is an address, right, and a client name as a potential. And so before they come in, we'll do some initial due diligence. We'll look at the zoning, and a lot of times we can pinpoint, I bet this is the issue. But when we go into consultations, the first thing I say is, pretend we're in a coffee shop. Tell me what's going on and how we can help. And so getting the full story from them, which may have some nuance that you've seen an issue, but you haven't seen the broader picture. And kind of hearing, who have you talked to at the local government level? Do you have an engineer or an architect involved? What have you done so far? And getting all that background to then help chart that course for next steps.
And do you all set meetings in DeLand and Daytona?
We do.
And other places.
There you go.
Sometimes we go to people and meet with them. So
That's true.
a lot of times you got to kick the tires. You got to look at the situation, the property or the building or whatever it is that you're trying to help with. And I always make it a point to do that.
So what do you think sets Cobb Cole's land use department aside from our competitors?
I'd start just by saying I don't think we have anybody else that is deep and has been doing it as long as we have. We have, how many would we say full-time? 5?
5, 6
Yeah.
and a half.
And so we have
part-time.
some part-time land use lawyers that dabble in it, but for the most part, I don't know that there's ever been anybody in Volusia County that had that many land use practitioners in the same house. And then when you combine it with how broad our expertise is into the other areas that relate, the real estate, the tax, the corporate stuff, estate planning things that all relate to what we do, I just think that we're, like I said, a big fish in a small pond. And like Jessica said, we're a big part of the community too. So we know the people, we know the players, we know everybody, and we take pride in what we do. So I think that makes us better.
And one of the key pieces of Cobb Cole's kind of commitment to the community is when you're around for 100 years, people remember what you say and what you do. And so for each attorney, especially in the land use context, which is a little bit more of a community-wide visibility practice of law, you know that when you get in front of a podium or when you get in front of a community group, what you say matters, and they're going to remember it for this project and for every project down the road. And so you carry yourself and your projects and your teams with a level of integrity and trustworthiness. That it's not to say that every attorney doesn't strive for that, but it's that you know that you live here and you work here and you are going to run into them on Saturday at Publix or Trader Joe's.
Or social media.
That's true. They're very active there as well. And so your integrity and your reputation is a part of your trade intrinsically. And so protecting that for your clients as well is a huge benefit.
One final fun question for you all. Rob has been here for how many years have you
Almost
been?
40 years.
Okay. What's one thing in Volusia County that we don't currently have that you think that we should have?
Okay, everybody's going to say Whole Foods, right? Because we have so much. But the truth is, on
That's funny.
a larger scale, we need more jobs. We need more industry. You know, we need people. And I'm talking about my kids and wanting them to live here. You know, we need jobs. We need a place where they feel like they have the things that they get when they go to a bigger city. And I think we're working towards that. I mean, Jessica and I have some other projects that we're working on that are hopefully bringing more industry here. And I think that's a big part. If you're going to pick one thing, but there's so many. I mean, we're getting better at a lot of things, but that's the one that I think we probably have the most potential to grow with.
I agree. Yeah, I think overall as a county, we've seen a lot of growth. You know, some people would say explosive growth, but I think that's the state and nation catching up after the crash. And so getting us back to the level of where we were projected for all this time. Then you look at what amenities are missing. You know, when COVID happened, you've got people working remotely. And so what draws people to stay in a community? And why should that community be Volusia County? And those pieces are, you know, great opportunities to enjoy artwork, to enjoy community, to enjoy natural areas. We've got great strengths there. But like Rob said, the industries to support those individuals at the wages that they're looking for, I think is a key piece that we're still working on.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate you, Rob and Jessica. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Great. Happy to be here.
If you're interested in hearing more about the land use and zoning law services at Cobb Cole, please contact us at 386-255-8171. We proudly serve all of Volusia and beyond with the offices in Daytona Beach and DeLand. Cobb Cole is a multi-lawyer firm specializing in practice areas from estate planning to real estate. Cobb Cole, your legal compass.
The information you obtain from this podcast is not, nor is it intended to be, legal advice. You should consult an attorney for advice regarding your individual situation. We invite you to contact us and welcome your calls, letters, and electronic mail. Contacting us does not create an attorney-client relationship. Please do not send any confidential information to us until such time as an attorney-client relationship has been established.